It's the 5 by 5 with your host, David. And you're listening to the Bite Me Cast. I was just so waiting for this episode this week, well, this past week. This is on Sunday. I guess it would be this week, Sunday, of True Blood. When I tell you, I was, in some parts, I was almost brought to tears because, this Terry Bellefleur, it was his, I guess his memorial, or no, it was the funeral. And just everybody, all the flashbacks kind of gave you. So, I guess it was newly filmed stuff, but they was doing flashbacks where with the fish, with him and Samerlot and Andy, and then Sookie was showing that she was. She read his mind early on when he first met Arlene. And I guess this was before she was married to that one guy that was killing everybody in the first season. I think it was Andre or something like that. And so I was like, oh wow, this is it was sad, but it was good. And it's like, beginning of the season, I thought, oh, this season is it's not the same. But the last 2 or 3 episodes, they've definitely have gotten back to the formula of what made the show, in my experience, in my opinion, awesome like it is. And I'm just totally infatuated with Anna Paquin. She is really the Lex of the last 3 episodes. She has just kind of tied everything together, and her character Sookie is so strong. And that's kind of how it starts when Bill, we know where we ended last episode when Bill and Sookie was going to get Warlow, and they had found out that Eric had drained a lot of his blood. But that's where we pick up on episode 9. Yeah, episode 9, because next week is the season finale. And he's, Bill's being Bill, this crazy vampire leader, god or whatever, Billeth, I get that phrase has been coined ever since the end of last season. But and he's saying Warlow needs to go, and she pretty much stops him, and then she zaps him out of the little fairy plane with her light, and then she proceeds to bite her own arm and let Warlow feed off her. And then you see a flashback to the funeral, and you see Arlene, and then you see Letty Mae. Where the hell did Letty Mae come from? Letty Mae, did we see Letty Mae last season? I can't remember. I know we haven't seen her this season at all. But I think there's something up with her and her husband, the preacher, because when they showed up, she's like, we wouldn't have missed this for the world. So I don't know what that is going to, how that's going to affect next episode. But it was kind of cool. If you have HBO Go or HBO, they did show a preview, and I think she's being drained by Tara. I'm not sure, but the real quick flash that I did see, I think I seen Tara on her neck, and Letty Mae was being drained. But that was cool to see her back. And of course, there was outside. Um, who else was there? Samerlot, his new girlfriend, Andy, the grandmother, the cousin. The military was there, 'cause I guess he was a Marine. Um, and who else? There's somebody else there yeah. Remember when Sookie finally makes it, when she leaves the ferry plane to go to the funeral, and before that, her and Warlow have this kind of quick exchange. He asks her, was she really prepared to, become his fairy vampire bride? And she says, when I make a promise, I stick to it. And then, he heals her, and she gets kind of weird about it, because I think she's still fighting it. I honestly don't think she's going to go through with it. I think something's going to happen. But then in the previews, she's drinking somebody's blood. So I don't know whose it is. But anyhow, she gets to the funeral, and then the first person she sees, oh, I guess the grandmother. The grandmother was hilarious. She's like, isn't it that Stackhouse girl, the weirdo? And then Arlene apologized. She's like, don't worry about it. But then she sees Hoyt. They make a reference to Hoyt. Um, Thorntonberry, because his mother is sitting there with the other chick that we met in the first episode of the very first season. I forget her name, and she says Hoyt's doing good. He has a girlfriend, ugly as sin, but it's not a red-headed slut or whatever she calls her, referring to Jessica. So I'm glad they made that. So Hoyt was kind of there. His mother was there, and then there was, it was like the gang was all there. Um, paying tribute, Lafayette, paying tribute to Terry at his funeral service. So I thought that was kind of uh, that was a nice touch. And then Sookie and outside have an exchange, which I don't know where they stand. It was very weird. That was kind of a weird to put that there, and she doesn't let him sit by him because she's waiting for Jason. But unbeknownst to her, he's at the Vamp Camp being drained by all the female vamps. But then we find Bill going to the Vamp Camp, and he walks up and there's like a massacre. There's heads and arms, and the gore was like crazy. And he goes in and he's looking for Eric, and they do. And I guess Eric's walking around at the same time Bill is looking for him, and he's letting all the vampires go. And the first, no, yeah, the first person he sees is the person, if you remember, not last episode, but episode 4, where they were still at the camp when the doctor, I think his name is Overlord, he injected Eric's sister with the a Hep V, and so he snatches his private areas off, and then there's blood everywhere, and I kind of almost threw up because that was nasty. But he said, "I'm gonna come back and make sure that you have bled out." But uh, let's see. And then they're back to they do a lot of going back and forth from the people at the funeral talking about Terry, and then going back to the Vamp Camp. I guess it really doesn't matter. But then, and I didn't know that Andy was his cousin. I thought they were brothers, but they are cousins. And he said they called them brothers, but they were cousins. That's something I didn't know. Um, and then we see Jason when he finally gets into the female um, population of the vampires, and some of them have been feeding on Jason, and he's laying there all, you know, almost bled dry. And then Eric asked him, "Have I ever healed you before?" But I thought he had healed Eric before. I mean, Jason before. I was like, I think he had, but Jason said no, and he's like, when you dream of nice things, because you remember, every time a vampire gives somebody their blood, they have very erotic dreams about the vampire that they fed off of. So I don't know if they're going to do anything with that or not, because he obviously gave him a lot of blood. Because then next thing we see, Jason has popped up, and then Sarah Newland, we see she's hiding under dead bodies, and she doesn't get away, but she takes off, and then they make a couple more flashbacks to the cemetery. The one flashback that I liked the most out of all of them, I think Sam spoke, of course, Sookie spoke, Arlene spoke, Andy spoke, his cousin spoke, and but Lafayette. Now, when I tell you Lafayette was looking fierce, even though the grandmother was not, she wasn't feeling it, because the first thing she says is that a boy? Is that a girl?" I thought that was hilarious. But uh, Lafayette, I mean, whoever did his makeup, it was on point. That I know females that want eyelashes like that and will pay good money, but he reminded me of what was that movie Dinah Ross was in? Was it Lady Sings the Blues or Mahogany? It might have been Mahogany, where she had the hat on and all these eyelashes and this makeup, and he just looked really good. Even though that's not my taste in guys, but he did really, really, really look good, and he gave a really nice memory of Terry. I like if you've seen it, how he was showing him how to do the French fries, and it was classic. It was classic Lafayette. Because like I said, this season I don't think they've known what they knew or know. I don't think they knew what to do with Lafayette, and for that matter, Tara this season. But they played big roles in prior seasons, but this season they don't know what to do. He's just kind of stuck there. Um, but he's doing his thing, and he's being like I said, classic Lafayette, showing Terry. And you see Terry kind of bumping and grinding, doing these fries. So I thought that was special, and he had a moment there. Um, and then Sookie comes out, so to speak. Sookie comes out as being a telepath. Now, whether everybody understood what that was, she didn't tell them that she was a fairy, but she said that she was a telepath. So I'm like, I don't know if that's the first time she's kind of came out. Everybody knew she was strange and different, but I don't think that's the first time she's ever publicly said to people who didn't know um, that she was a telepath. But they kind of glossed over that and kept it moving. They really didn't experience. So I don't know if they're going to talk about it in the next episode or not, but they just might. Um, and then we see that, but we're back at the Vamp Camp, and then Bill realized the conversation that him and Sookie had about Eric having so much of Warlow's blood inside of him, because Eric, we know he's walking in around in daylight, and then Bill decides to let the female vamps, where Jessica is, to go back. He stomps in Overlock's face when he says, "Have you hurt a redheaded vampire named Jessica Hamby?" And he's like, "Yes," because he was begging Bill to kill him. He said, "I will be glad to kill you." He stomps his face in. Kind of crazy. Um, but then Eric, there's a young vamp, and his maker is being taken over by the Hep V, and he lets them all go. And then I think we see, Eric and Jason finds the therapist, and the therapist tells Eric that he had sex with his progeny, Pam, and that just sends, I think that this craziness that Eric is drifted into, um, he is made him crazy, and he's like, "You're lying." And so he snatches out of our school. He snatches those um, contact lenses out that was not allowing the vamps to glamour the humans, and he glamours them, and he tells them, "Yes, I did." And he's like, "You should have asked me one last thing before when we had our sessions. How are you going to die, so you can be prepared?" And he's like, "But I'm not going to kill you. I'm gonna let Pam do it." So of course he's scared, and they run into the big silo, the white room, with what they call it, um, and you see all the vampires that were in there feeding on Bill, and Jason's like, "That's some sick shit," or something he says. So Jason is Jason, and then and Bill's laying out on the ground, and then Steve Newland is trying to feed, and Jessica pushes him off once, and then Eric grabs him, and Bill's like, "Let him have my blood." He's like, "No," and then Steve's trying to weasel his way out of it, and at that time Sarah Newland had been going up the side, and she's reciting, I think it's the 23rd Psalms, and she finally opens it, and but they fed on Bill, and he has Warlow's blood inside of him, and so the sun doesn't affect him, but it does affect Steve Newland, and she's looking down, and he sees her, and he's like, "I love you," and then he says, "Jason Stackhouse," and then he blows up, and then we see Ginger from the little bartender at Fantasia, she's screaming, then uh, Jason screaming, and then uh, Pam talks to Eric. He's like, the therapist is yours, and she's like, "You're so good to me," and she goes there, and then you see them kind of in all this kind of, it's like kind of a trance they're in after the blood they've taken from Bill, um, and then they end up going outside with the sun, um, and then the flashback to, I guess they were at the funeral, everybody saying their goodbyes, and then somebody stands up, another person that was at the funeral, Big John, I guess his name is Big John something, and he starts singing, which Big John Dixon, and he starts singing, which was a really sweet song. I never heard it before. I think something they probably created for the show, but it was good, and the grandmother said, "There's an awful lot of Negroes here." That's so funny. Um, but um, so obviously Sarah Newland's trying to take off, um, and so they say, "Have we killed it?" Pam says, "Have we killed everybody that's supposed to be killed here?" And Jason says no, so he takes off after her and he tackles her. He's gonna blow her brains out, but they weren't gonna make Jason a killer, not like that anyhow. And he lets her go, but he says some really, I think, some smart things for Jason. He says that, you don't have the right to speak for God, and I think that's important. Not just for the show, but for everybody. There's a lot of people, Christians out there that think they can speak for God, and that's where they fall short when they kind of embrace that part. Not even Christianity, they embrace that they are the voice of God when they're not. That's just my opinion. Um, and they're starting. Then the vampires start destroying all the true blood that's ready to be shipped out. But then they pan to Hawaii, and there's a truck that shows up. So I don't know if Eric called somebody or because there's a vampire there waiting on them. I don't know if all those vampires, if they take the true blood, they're going to die because it has Hep B in it. Um, but that's kind of bizarre to me. But they're just doing it at the Vamp Camp, and this one thing is funny about the funeral. After the guy stops singing, he Arlene hugs him, and she's like, "That was the shit." I thought that was funny as well. Um, but that's about it. Well, no, that's not it. Um, Jessica gets a call from Bill because now we see the three sirens of Lilith, and they're coming to get him. It's like, "Well, you're finished," and he's telling them, "No, I'm not." They're telling him that his time on Earth is done, and he's like, "No, no, it's not. I'm not going anywhere." And then he calls Jessica, and she comes in there with her new boyfriend, vampire boyfriend, and then they end up feeding him and bringing him back. So there's gonna be, so next episode they got to wrap a lot of stuff up. The whole Lilith storyline, which I doubt they'll take into next season. They just might. Now we have vampires walking around in daylight. Um, is Sookie going to be the bride of Warlow? I think Grandpa's going to come along and save the day some way. I think I said that my last episode. And then we have to deal with the fallout from the new vampires and the like, because with the preview they was talking about, there's vampires that are hungry and they're on the warpath. They're starting this war, and so I want to know what happens with between Bill and Lilith, Bill and Sookie. Oh, and then you see the last scene when they're all walking away, going back to Bill's mansion. Um, Pam turns around and she sees Eric in the distance, and he kind of smiles, and she's like, "Don't you dare leave me!" And he shoots up in the sky like Superman. I know they flew that fast, but he's an old vampire. But so he takes off, and it goes off. So we have a lot to look forward to coming Sunday with the season finale. I did this separate this time because this needed a my full time talking about um, True Blood, and I would do Teen Wolf, which is getting crazy as well on later on this week. But thank you guys for listening. Like, this is my second cast on the Bite Me cast from the 5 by 5. You can always catch up, and I'm trying to get the information to have the show broadcast live on the website, but there's always going to be an upload You also can find us on Blog Talk Radio and also the 5 by 5 on Facebook. Please go and like the page. We are This is not on iTunes, but what I upload to Blog Talk Radio will be on iTunes, so you can still catch us on iTunes and Stitcher. And then you can always tweet us at the 5 by 5 where the fives are numeric. So, like I said, the Bite Me Cast is gonna um, it was not going to end. These two shows, Teen Wolf and True Blood, will be ending next week for True Blood, and then 2 additional weeks, 3 weeks for um, Teen Wolf. And then we have so much other stuff to look for. Supernatural's coming back. Remember Supernatural and how it ended last season with all the angels being kicked out of heaven. Um, and then we have Being Human will be back, which I, it, the subject matter in Being Human now is so deep for me. Sometimes it's hard for me to watch. So I wish they would lighten it up like the first season, but they went to a dark place that I'm not too sure I'm going to look at this year. And then of course the Vampire Diaries with Bonnie's death. So we have to see how that takes effect this season. So, and The Walking Dead. So we have a lot of things to talk about on the Bite Me Cast. Thank you for joining me. I'm David, your host, and we'll see you next time. The Bite Me Cast.